There you go. Right, so our first exercise is going to be tones. So I have some white acrylic and black acrylic. I'm using a flat brush, but any brush is good. Flat brush is quite nice and simplified to mix for mixing colors and experimenting with paint. So we have a range of tones when we look at anything, okay? Sometimes to simplify our image, tones will help us to see almost like a quick summary, what's light, what dark. Quite often the colors confuse us, what is slightly lighter, what's slightly darker, okay? But when we have a color wheel, yes, for example, these colors, orange and green, could be the same darkness. But unless we use our camera, perhaps, and focus on a mode of black and white, yeah, we might not know it. Or it's harder to us to compare, will that green and that red will be the same darkness or not. Sometimes it's quite important in our painting. So knowing that and kind of mixing them is really, really good practice. It also helps us mix in other colors later on. So the plan is, if we were to create a variety of shades, well, a variety of darknesses, yeah, from white to black, it doesn't matter if they're not going to be in perfect line. We can just cross them, put some notes, and practice to that. It's not important. What's important is mixing that variety, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a tiny bit of water on my brush, bit of white, and I'm going to put a block of white. You can't see it probably on the screen, but it's a block of white there. Okay, ready. I'm going to use another brush, and I'm going to make a little block of black. Okay, nice and solid. Okay, so we've got a block of black. And if I'll mix them together, we've got something in between. Now, it doesn't have to be, it's 50% of white and 50% of black, not always. So you just visually need to compare it. And if it's just roughly somewhere there, okay. I might be right in the middle for that gray, I might not be, it doesn't matter. Most importantly, we've got some, if I'll just outline this one, then we see that's more of a white there.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so that's my white there. So, to make it a little bit more easier on ourselves, how do we mix it? How do we divide them? How do we subdivide it? The easiest part is starting just from the white. So this is my fresh white. If I were to add a minuscule amount of black to it, or even that gray to it, and mix it together, just a very, very, very tiny, 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 tiny bit. Okay, I can't quite see there as well, so that's probably not enough either. A very, very, very tiny, you can just about to see it on the screen. Like in a tiny, 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 tiny bit more. Okay, that's quite a big jump, so maybe a bit too quick. Yeah, so the mastery here is to get the smallest changes we can get. Okay, so they're changing, but they are very subtle. And that's the difficulty in any painting, okay? And once you feel more comfortable with those changes, changes of darkness, changes of color, that's when you become more and more confident painter, okay? So I'm just slowly, slowly getting darker. And again, I have loads of practice. That's why I find it's quite easy to do it in one go, okay? If you start mixing the paints and suddenly one color is super, super dark and the next one is a bit too light and it's out of the order, you can just put little arrows. Yeah, so this one may be after another one. It doesn't matter as long as you're mixing them. Okay. Another option we could have started with is painting from the black. Yeah. So I might have started somewhere from the black and slowly started to add tiny bit more white to it. Yeah. Tiny bit of white, a little bit more white. Okay, can I see much difference? Maybe just very, very minor. Okay, maybe a little bit more of that white. So it's somewhere in between they're going to meet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Oh, yeah.
the chart here says from 0 to 10. Now you can mix probably more than 9. You can mix less than 9. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Mm.
But as long as
Is
you mix in them, sometimes it's just easier to explain what we're talking about there, yeah? But it doesn't really matter. There's no specific number of
And
them.
really, so the tones you're mixing really are just the tones that you'd use in your own picture,
Yes, yeah.
your own
Well,
range.
just generally,
Yeah,
yes, exactly that range, yes. I think we're more or less met here, yeah?
yeah.
That one is there, yeah? So it doesn't matter if you're mixing it from light or from black. What's important is when you look at your picture, you could say, ooh, I think these are my lights. Yeah, so you're somewhere here. Or these are my most darks. Yeah, so some of those darks. There might be a range of darks, lighter dark, medium dark, yeah, or darker dark, super black. But you've got that understanding. So when we're talking about, oh, let's go for darker, let's go for shadows, or darker shadows, or let's just not go for the perfect darkness and just go for a lighter version of it. So then it starts making sense. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
So, and the whole, of course, picture could be done in those lights and darks. So we tend to group them into threes, like simplified ones, or like simplified. I'll just pick up a pencil here. I simplified perhaps a group of three, perhaps that group of three there, yeah, perhaps a group of three there, plus minus in volume.
Mhm.
So if I were to paint maybe the sky, I might work into those tones. If I'm painting darker trees, there might be these tones, maybe the shadows of those trees and some mountains might be something darker. So that's all really.
But when you say
Okay?
that, is it what you mean is that you'd get the color you use in that
Yes,
tone? Yeah,
yes.
right.
So for example, I might pick a picture. It depends on what we're painting completely, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's planning, it's seeing what's the photograph or what's the view is in front of us or what's the still life or whatever it is there, yeah. So for
yeah.
example, I might have some mountains there just for simplifying it. So that might be my lighter tone, okay, as a block, maybe like a lighter tone. I can put varieties of it, but so far it's a lighter tone. I could have, let's say, a medium tone somewhere at the front. Maybe there's some foreground, there's some trees or something else in there. Maybe a little bit light actually. So it's more medium, something there. So we try to think of the image as, can we break it into sub-segments? Okay. Maybe certain objects will be lighter, certain objects will be darker. Maybe my mountain's going to be all together. I'm just very much simplifying an idea. Much darker. Okay. So
So
all together.
you could have quite a jump in the tones then.
Yes. Well, so
Yeah,
far I'm just planning them. What's going to be the darkest? What's going to be medium? What's
yeah.
going to be lightest in my picture? Okay.
Mm, mm.
And then I will slowly start subdividing it. Yeah. So for example, the sky could have subtones of in between grays. Okay, there might be something a little bit lighter here. So that's not a pure white, but
Yeah.
just a lighter one. Yeah. Then there might be some fresh white. So those are my three subdivided tones.
Mm.
Okay. There we go. So there might be something there. Okay, within my medium gray, I can subdivide. So if I'll go too light into that medium, might be too much, yeah? But if I were to think of it as within subtones, so maybe there will be some tiny bit of something darker, but also there might be something tiny bit lighter, yeah? There might be, I don't know, path as well, or something in there. I'm just making things up at the moment. So I have something a little bit lighter, the initial in between middle gray, and maybe something tiny bit more darker in there, yeah? And let's say for that black, so if I were somewhere, not into the lightest one, but somewhere in the middle of that dark, I can go even darker, quite happily. Great, another ridge or another valley there. And again, it is looking. So when you're painting, it's constantly looking and deciding which elements are going to be much more darker, which one's going to stay within the medium tones. Yeah. So I've got that range now slowly happening. Okay. I think that's a little bit reflecting here. So we can see that one slightly different. And then I've got something blackish. Yeah. So I've got a full range of darknesses in here then. It doesn't mean that on my path I can't have, I don't know, something else in there and add, but overall it looks subdivided there, yeah. It doesn't mean that I can't have a very dark something, I don't know, bird coming or maybe tree coming here or something else in there. But overall, simply by simplifying shapes, it allows us to see things better. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So exercise 1 for us to practice. Perhaps pick up a photograph, yeah, or an image you want to work from. Take a photograph, black and white image of it, or even print it just in black and white setting. And then just work out which areas will be your lightest. Which areas will be, this might be not just land, it might be more than one area, but maybe not too many. Kind of simplify it. What will be more medium and which areas will stay more dark. So I could have done the trees and other poles and separated it, but kind of if you think of simplified versions first, and then we can add other elements afterwards, okay?
What always happens with me is that I'll start doing it, and then I always end up almost going back to the first tone and then readjusting that, and then I end up readjusting the next tone. And
so you constantly have to think of, is that my group of lighter tones? Is that the group of my medium tones? I'm not allowed to go any further than that. Yeah, when I'm working into that medium tone, I'm not allowed to go further than into that light one, and I'm not allowed to go any further than those black ones. You can do anything in between, but you can't go lighter or darker.
Right.
Okay, so you have to limit yourself. So that's quite decision and kind of sticking to it.
Right.
Staying a little bit rigid, because we can go full range and paint and repaint it and being perfectionist, and yeah, you just have to kind of to stay. And it also organizes us as artists to make those decisions. Okay, simplifying it. Photographs and life could be everything, just too much. We zoom in into so many details, we get lost. We need that little almost like a formula to give ourselves a plan, what we're going to stick to. Okay, so this is going to be our almost like the essay: introduction, main part, conclusion. Yeah, we can't mix them all up. We can work with the note parts. Okay, right. So now let's pick up one color. I'm gonna pick up. Have you got a violet?
I probably do. Yes. Yeah, I do.
Okay, right. Let's pick up some violet, and let's do a little experiment with the violet. I'm going to wash my brush, all my brushes. Okay. Okay. Right, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make my violet. Well, first of all, let me just soften it so you can see it's a violet. So we can make this violet the deepest one, the darkest one. Let's say if I put it somewhere here. So that's just no white, just the darkest as it come. I might just put a tiny bit higher so it doesn't reflect. And I'm going to, oops, the brush gone mucky. And I'm going to use the white on the other side. And I'm going to do exactly the same what we've done with our black and white, but by adding a bit of violet. So a tiny, tiny dab of violet. It's quite a lot. Okay, let's just mix it with a bit of white, so it will be just an off violet. Well, it's quite pale. The color is called deep violet, but when it's so diluted, it's so pale. It's almost like purpley color. I can't quite see it. It's almost like a off-white. Tiny bit more. And tiny bit more. If it becomes a little bit stripy, I can just make sure that I mix my paint really well so there is no stripiness. Okay, and again, tiny bit more. Sometimes less water on the brush, but mainly white, and the color will make us have more even color mixing. Okay, that's better. Okay, so very, very slowly, and it takes time. It doesn't have to be as fast as I'm doing it. Okay, those are quite similar. You can see those are quite similar.
Yeah.
So that's a bit similar. All we need to do is tiny bit more paint. Okay, I think my brush needs mixing properly inside of my bristles. Okay, tiny bit darker now. That's good. And again, tiny, tiny bit more. And tiny, tiny, tiny bit more. And I could probably go further than my darkest one. Probably can go a little further, and I'm going to continue there. And maybe find my full darker violet far. A little bit further than I expected. Okay, now coming closer to this more solid violet. So anytime we're using white with the color, we call those combinations of color, well, varieties are tints. Yeah, so something lighter becomes tints.
So
Okay.
anytime you use white, it's a tint.
Yes, if it's a pure color.
Yeah, a white and pure color, it equals a tint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for example, cadmium yellow is a fresh color, is a more of a colors on our basic color wheel. I'll come back to that. But if I were to pick up ochre, it's not on a color wheel. Yeah, it's ochre is a bit of a mixed, two colors in between, so they're kind of somewhere neutral. I'll talk about it later on. So, but if we're talking about these colors with white, they're tints. But you can always say it's a tint of ochre, or it's a tint of, so it means it's a lighter version of it, yeah?
Okay.
So that's all good there. Now, if we were to add black to a color, that will be our shades. Now, I haven't picked up the best color to mix black with because our darkest violet is already looking dark. So I'm not going to make much of a progress to show you that, okay? But if we were to pick up, let's say, a yellow, we can quite happily. Now, if yellow is a very light color, so if I were to mix it with white, there wouldn't be much of a show. Does it make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably you still can do that if you want to, but you're just not going to.
Yes, it's just not really good.
What you're saying is you're just not going to get the range.
Yes, correct. Just for our exercise,
okay.
It's not going to get the range. That's correct.
Okay.
So we could pick up.
Should I be looking? I've got.
Have you got a crimson?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's pick up a crimson then.
Crimson. Sorry. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let's pick up a crimson. And you can do it with all of your colors. And that's sometimes it's if it makes sense and makes logic and it kind of works clear in your head, there's no really need for it. But sometimes once in our lifetime we have to go through that process. So then it's out of the system, you can say, yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's only to see that range. So the yellow will have very little range in with white, but it will have a really good range with using it with black to make the shades. Violet was very good to make the varieties of black or varieties of tints. Right. So let's go for the red. Again, if I were to mix, if I'll start with some white, I find it easier with the white. So here is my white here. And I'll add a tiny dab of a crimson to that. And a tiny dab more.
So we're doing white again, are we?
Yes. Yeah. Just to show what that difference is going to be.
Right.
So then we can compare both. Because the color will start changing, start looking slightly different, not just in darkness, but also the color will start amending. Okay, tiny bit more. Okay, so that one we got.
Quite a strong colour in the white, isn't it? The red.
It is, yes, it is, yes. And almost as dark as we can get. And then perhaps the strongest, just the pure one. Okay. And again, if you haven't got the right order, it doesn't matter. As long as you can see the difference. We can always put arrows or numbers or whatever it is, or practice. Sometimes you can do it even on a separate piece of paper and almost cut them and then glue them together. But to be able to mix, for example, if I mixed a darker red when I'm painting, and I could kind of look at it and say, oh, that's too dark. I need something more in the middle. So I'm mixing it more to the middle area, but I'm not making it super, super light. So it's being able to judge that, yeah, and being able to do it quite quickly. That's what's a tricky part.
Yeah. I imagine that's a lot of experience, to be
Yes,
honest.
it is, yeah. Or just giving yourself time to do it. Yeah. So
Right,
knowing
yeah.
knowing that that range is there, but not worried about it. Okay.
My crimson has come out as a selection more of pinks rather than
That's okay. See if you can keep going till you get to the most stronger one, or you can even put a very, very strong crimson on the paper and see if you can get a tiny bit lighter. So that will be a good exercise as well.
actually they're quite nice colours, really, aren't they? The crimsons.
They are, they are. Let's get some black. So now we've got the darkest red. Now I'm going to start using a little bit of black. So as I was using tiny, tiny, tiny bit of white, I'm going to start using tiny, tiny bit of black now. So that's quite a lot too quickly. So I'm going to have more red. Black is extremely powerful. So you need to go very, very lightly on it to make those changes. So that's already a change. And I might just use more full strength of that earlier one. It's very easy to make a super dark color very quickly.
Right.
That's not the point. Yeah. And the same as with white, you can make it very quickly, but you enjoyed making that variety. So that's better. So I've got 2 now, but it's coming quite close to its limit. Okay, we can still see some red in it, so it's more of a reddish brown kind of look. Again, you can just about see it on the screen, but the other range is starting to be more and more black, and we're not going to see it on a screen match. You more detect it when it's in front of you, so that's probably still can see a bit of red in it, but perhaps not much on the screen. And that's going to be my pure black here. So a human eye distinct those colors. So the last 2, I can see it, the difference, but maybe not on the screen as much. So that was my pure color. Those are my tints. And those are my shades.
Like some lovely rich browns, doesn't it?
Yes.
You can see what you're saying now about the you know, getting used to your own paints and what colours you can actually mix.
Yes.
That's lovely. And that's often one of the struggles I have is like, what colour do I want? And
yes,
I think to myself, you know, it's surely, you know, there's an abundance of colours, and yet you feel limited to red, blue, and yellow. Do you know what I mean?
yes, yes.
That's lovely.
And yeah, just black and white, you already
Yeah.
have some gorgeous darker, not just appearing reds, but as you said, browns, yeah?
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
violets, it's almost very pale purple, almost like coming close to even pinkish look, yeah? Some of these ones just beautiful, beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, depending on your white manufacturing, sometimes it can dry lighter or could dry as it is, or can dry darker. So again, just to know your white or with different colors. So for example, if I'll mix it with yellow, it might dry more or less the same. But if I mix it with ochre, it might dry slightly lighter because ochre has some white as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I were to make another picture, let's say just using my reds, if I'll just use less water, if I'll use red and black and white, and I'll stick to the same mountains, and you can pick up an image you like to work from. That will be a really good practice for you as well. So again, if I'll stick to the idea of lights, mediums and darks, but now into my tints and shades of red. So maybe somewhere in the middle will be my medium ones. Somewhere into the light, I'll have my tints. Somewhere in between, I could have my shades. So here is my white. There is my bit of red. So my sky is going to be maybe somewhere here. So I'll just do a variation of my mountains. Okay, I already have something on my brush of slightly darker red, of some sort of clouds or sky. Okay, so that's perhaps my variation there. And I can still put a bit of fresh white if I wanted some fresh white. So that's variation, yeah, within that light. Okay, let's do my medium ones. So that's my stronger red. Okay, that's might be most of it there, but let's make some variations of it. So something fresh red, which makes it darker already, and maybe a tiny bit of black as I'm using somewhere here area. So those a little bit more into the black versions will work as well. Again, maybe there will be another road here. Maybe there will be some other trees or something across there. Yeah, so that variety of the medium tones is there. And I'm going to go for more into the darks. So mainly the red and black. Tiny bit more darker. So I tend to start for the darks, something lighter and build it up. So lighter within the blacks, yeah? Or within the darks, we say.
Sorry,
Say it again.
say that again, Julia. I didn't understand that.
So I'm working now into the dark tones, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's easier to start with a lighter version of the darks, then make it darker,
And then
yeah?
make it darker,
Rather
yeah.
than go into black and then making it light. I suppose you can do, but I tend to do it that way. So then I know I haven't over blackened everything. Black hole is not the best thing to work with there. Okay, so I'm going slightly darker. Yeah. And if I wanted to have even darker tones, I can work into even more darker reds, blacker looking ones there. Okay, so that's my variation now. And again, if I needed to, because it doesn't have to be, pictures never work. One area is only light, another one is only dark, another one is only mediums. Yeah, things overlap. So there will be again some maybe trees or poles or other things, or maybe a puddle which suddenly will have a little bit of extra light. Yeah, so that's okay to add afterwards, but as long as you break it down into overall tones and have that understanding, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it is beautiful to work with one color, black and white, especially when you find the right color for whatever you're painting. Yeah, try something the same view within your violets and black and white, within your, I don't know, one of the greens and black and white. Not all colors will work. Let's say yellow might not work as much, but might be the opposite. By the time we'll have a big range of shades, yeah, yellow and black, it might give us fantastic range. So it's never ending kind of practices and exercises. It's just the range, that opportunity of varieties is fabulous and amazing. Okay, from one color, black and white. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Right, so any questions about kind of tones or those tints and shades of a color?
No.
Okay, good.
That's brilliant how you've explained it.
Right, so when we have a color wheel, So the basic theory of it, we have our primary colors, so yellow, red, and blue, and they just point to our color wheel, so that's where they are. And then when we mix two primary colors together, we have a secondary color. Two primary colors together, we have a secondary color. Okay. Now, the problem comes when we say which ones are primary colors. Yes, we have a yellow, but which one? There's so many of them. There is a cadmium yellow, there is a Prussian, there is a lemon yellow, there is a Hamza yellow, there are varieties of yellows, yeah? Darker ones, lighter ones, which ones? And again, this is something I have made, and different artists do similar things. They just use their colors to find out which colors are going to be their yellows, okay? Or their reds, or their greens, or their blues. But how we know that they're the right ones, it's a lot of experiment. Now, cadmium yellow tend to be the one. That's a simple one. What we don't tend to mix. Okay, so I put cadmium yellow systems 3. So I'm using systems 3, and that works for me there. And I know it will work perfectly if I mix it with an opposite color. What's my opposite color?
The blue.
Yes,
Blue?
it's my violet. Well, actually, if it's just violet, it's not quite opposite color. It's violet and ultramarine mixed together. So that becomes my perfect opposite color. How do I know that? If I mix them together, they give me gray in the middle. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay.
Right.
But that's how I find my color wheel. So in theory, as long as we know something purple there, it's of my opposite color. Okay.
Yeah.
Red and green. Okay, but which green? Yeah. So by mixing them perfectly, it makes a gray in the middle. That's how I know. And
so you mean if you do 50-50 of the color?
No, it doesn't work 50-50. No,
Sorry.
unfortunately.
But are you mixing them as primary colors?
Well, which are the primary colors? Which red is a primary color?
Yeah. I don't understand why you get the grey, because I thought that you got greys from mixing secondary colors.
No, you can mix them from your primary ones. Well, it's a primary. Yellow is a primary color. Violet is your secondary color. So you've got a gray. Any colors are opposite on a color wheel. If you mix them, they should give you the gray. Okay.
Right. It's because they're opposite each other.
Because they're opposite each other. So this is what we're going to do just for one color to give us an example. I'm going to get some yellow, cadmium yellow. And I'm going to get some of my violet. So if I think my violet is the correct color, by the time I mix it with yellow, I should have an opposite kind of, I should have a gray.
And when you say the correct color, is that because you're just looking to find out what's opposite the yellow?
Yes.
Right.
Again, you have to go through your colors to find out. You might
Right. And then does that give you what can you do then when you know that bit of information?
Exactly. So I have got, in theory, yellow and violet should give me, they're supposed to be opposite colors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gonna get some white. Because if I'll just mix them on their own, it's a bit too transparent. So if I were to put my brush is a bit mucky already. So my yellow, fresh yellow, I can put it on my color wheel. I'm very confident. There's nothing wrong with yellow. Cadmium yellow is perfect here on its own. And this is what it looks like if I put some white with it, as if we're making tints of yellow. Yeah. So again, that's a fantastic opportunity for us to do it like that. Okay, so it's there. And it's also would have gone on my triangle here. Okay, so That's not changing. That's there all the time. Right. I'm going to start mixing into a bit of violet. I'm going to add a tiny bit because it's a very powerful. Darker color is always powerful. So my yellow is getting a bit more towards violet. Getting towards a bit violet. Okay. Getting a bit more further into the violet. Kind of nice brown color. Doesn't feel like anything, right? It's getting more into the violet. And that's getting more violet-y. Okay. There is no gray there.
Right.
No chance there will be any. Okay. It just immediately goes into the brown. Okay. So there's nothing much we can do. We can be mixing and mixing it, and it's going to be just those ranges of yellows, beautiful ochres, yeah, and darker browns and lovely violets, but there is no gray in it. Okay. So just mixing it together, that's just confirms it. However, I'm just going to get another tissue here. If I were to make, so my violet is too close to the reds. Yeah, that's why it doesn't give me the perfect gray. So if I take it, and I might have, if I wasn't sure if it's more into the red or more into the blue, I might have just add more red to it and see what's going to happen. If it starts giving me gray, that's fantastic, but it's not. Okay.
And why is it important then, or why is it significant then if it's close to the red?
Right.
Is that because it?
Your colors will start looking different. That's when we start looking into warmer and cooler colors.
Right.
They will start. Well, let's just mix it with a little bit of red. See what's going to happen then, just to prove the theory. Okay. Sometimes just mixing it and getting it, kind of asking those questions. Okay, let's see if I'm going to start mixing that red with a bit of violet. Okay, a little bit of white so we can see what's going to happen there. Okay, that's quite nice. Okay, so can it be mixed with yellow? Yes, beautiful. But will it get any grayer? It just looks like nice warm colors in there. Yeah, doesn't look like it's going to get gray. So to cool it off, that redness in a way, by saying to cool it off, we mean to get some more bluer color. Yeah. So in any doubt, just test it. Yeah. If you've forgotten, just test it, and it will immediately tell you what to do next. So I'm going to put some ultramarine. Now, ultramarine is the closest to the violet blues. There are other blues, cobalt blue, which are closer to the green, but the ultramarine is closest to the violet. And again, you don't have to remember it. Once you start using it, that's when it kicks in. So that logic will start kicking in. So if I mix, so a bit too much water, some ultramarine and some violet together. So it looks just more bluer type of violet there, yeah? Okay, and then if I'll mix it now with my yellow, okay, I'll just got a lot of yellow here.
But you can see it looks more grey, doesn't it, already?
Yes, exactly. Look, so I just mixed it a tiny bit more blue here, or blue violet, and that's your grey.
So you're using the white just so you can really see what the color is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all you can see. So that's your perfect grey. Superb. We found our color. Okay. And most of the time you don't need to know it. Yeah. You just know violet, yellow, the opposite colors. That's your color wheel. Yeah. And you don't have more than these colors. How many pairs have we got? 12 pairs. Yeah. So it's again, if you've got your violet, maybe your violet is more purple. Maybe your violet is a perfect one. What type of violet do you have? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you get your colors out and you test them out, you more or less identify them. Is it going to be more pure violet? We need to be here. Is it more into the purple, or is it more into the ultramarine? Okay, that's all. That's all it needs for. Okay, so if I were to put my opposite color here, and it is a quite wonderful explorative exercise. So if I put again my ultramarine and violet and just a bit of white so I can see what they are. And sometimes I put too much ultramarine and that gray is not quite gray. Yeah. Or if I put too much violet, it's that gray is not going to, it's again going to be pushing into the brown. Yeah. Or it's going to start pushing towards the blue. So that's how you know. So that's going to stay somewhere there. And if I wanted to have a darker version of it, I'll just have less white. So that's my color there. Okay, and I can place it here as well. Now, all these varieties, unfortunately, there isn't quite, maybe there is, if you go through all sorts of paints, and if you do pick up a perfect yellow and a perfect red and a perfect blue, in physics, it works with light, yeah, in our rainbow. But we don't deal with rainbow. We deal with physical paint made out of chemical elements or earth parts of the different minerals. Yeah, so they're physical elements which not always behave the same as light. But we in paints, we're trying to imitate the light. Okay. So, and different manufacturers, different paints have slightly different names or slightly different versions of it. And again, you can just pick up slightly different colors. You know you're aiming for, let's say, yellowish green, looking like that. And you know you're aiming for purple. So somewhere there, depends what you have, yeah? You might just mix it, and that's what your color is going to be, or you might need to buy a specific one. I tend to go, that's why I use about 7 colors. I tend to go for cadmium yellow, emerald green. If I mix those two together, I will make that one, and I will be quite happily being able to do it, okay? Fellow blue is another one, but I can mix the emerald green and use that in between color, almost like a turquoise. I have ultramarine because you can't quite make it. I can mix that one. We just done that one. So that's why I have my violet. I have my crimson. Okay. And I can have a cadmium red, but I can mix those ones. I can quite happily mix. Okay. So I tend to have the crimson and the yellow, and these are easier to mix. But if I just have scarlet red or cadmium red, yeah, I can't mix crimson. If I mix it with purple, it's just a dirty, mucky color. I can't get that.
Yeah, because one of the things I'm finding is I get a lot of mucky colors, like lots of like dirty, not nice colors.
Yes. So sometimes that's what happens. Or you haven't washed your brush, and instead of a fresh yellow and green, you have in more of a ochre, yeah, mucky maybe color, or maybe another mucky color, so it doesn't quite happen. So that's when the clean brush and those pure colors. So crimson is important, emerald green is important. If you pick up another green, like let's say hooker's green, any other greens, they again, that variety in between here. And sometimes they have a bit of red in them, a little bit more orange in them. And that's kind of what allows us to do those other fresher colors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And let's just do just a very, so I'm not going to go through the rest of the colors. That's doable. I had a whole day class with a group doing it, but the principle is there. But I wanted to cover as well these warm colors, okay? Warm and cool colors. So let's say if we were to pick up, again, a yellow, okay? So I'm just going to have a clean brush here. So I have my yellow. It could be yellow on its own. It could be yellow and white. Yellow and white is easier to mix with other colors later. Okay, so I've got my yellow, nice and easy. And when we talk about family of colors, it's making them slightly into one side of the color wheel. So for yellow, I'll be adding a little bit of red. And to make it a bit cooler, I'll go a little bit more into the green. Okay. Now, I have my red and I have my blue, yeah? So I have my red. Can I add a tiny bit of red with it? Yeah, so that's quite dark red. Okay, if I'll go for a little bit less red in it, yeah. Can I go for even less red, more yellow? Yeah, so those are my warmer yellows. So if that one becomes more orange, these are my more warmer yellows. Okay, and I can make some more cooler ones if I use. So if I'll use my brush, which I haven't washed, and I'll have a lot of orange in it, I'll have mucky colors. Okay, so if I pick up fresh yellow, I've just wiped my brush, so fresh yellow, fresh white. So I could have gone for green, or I could go for tiny bit of blue, which will make it more green. Okay, that's quite a powerful green. So even from a tiny one, but if I'll pick up tiny bit of it, that's starting to look a little bit more into the green. Yeah.
Right.
Or could have just gone for the green, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same principle. Okay, so I'm just mixing it a little bit more. So that's my slightly darker version of my yellow. Yeah, not just darker, but cooler. It's more into the green. Okay. And I can always pick a different color. Let's say if I'm looking at greens, I can always say, is that my fresh emerald green? It hasn't got any yellow in it. Okay. Yep. Anything I'm adding more blue to it, that's going to be my cooler emerald or my cooler green. Anything I'm adding a little bit more yellow, it's going towards my warmer green. Okay. The same with reds. The second I add to my crimson a bit of yellow, I'm going into more orangey versions. The second I add tiny bit of purple, I'm going cooler. That's all this is. Okay, that's all this is. The same with blue. So if I'm into one of my blues, yeah, can I go tiny bit of that emerald green? I'm going into turquoise. If I'm adding a bit more purple, okay. So we call it, if you don't remember if it's warmer or cooler, it doesn't matter. It's greener blue, yeah, or it's purpley blue. And that's again super important. So it's not just, it's almost like for colors, our version, what we did with tones, yeah? When we looked at tones, where's my tones? When we looked at the three within a light, yeah? So there's middle one, there's darker one, there's lighter one. So the same here, there is a middle one, the fresh one, clear one, yeah, you can say that way. More cooler one, more orangey one. That's all it is. And we tend to do it for reds. We tend to do it for, you can even mix it for orange. Orange more into the yellow, orange more into the red. Green, lighter green, kind of yellowish green, more into the yellow, more into the emerald green. So you can do it with any of those colors. Okay. So that's again, that exercise there. And imagine if you're working with your red. If you're working with your red here, and you just add in a little bit of yellow to it, yeah, and you add in a tiny bit more purple to it, and then black and white. So you're making it a bit more complex, but still simplified. Because you have a range of light and dark, you've got one color, second and third. Okay. Right, another one I wanted to show you, but just to show you briefly as an understanding of a color wheel. A couple of samples I was working on. Let me open them up. So, for example, I have, let me just put a wet piece away, and the wet brushes away. So I've used so this is my pure crimson.
Yeah.
And this is my pure oh no, that was a mixed emerald green and phthalo green, because that gives me a middle one. So this one, okay. Yeah, that's the one, yeah. So no, that's just an emerald green, sorry, system 3 emerald green. Or phthalo green, they're both the same. That's what I'm saying. Sorry, not reading my notes properly. So no white in the first one. Second was tiny bit of white, so I can see the colors better because they're just looking blacker. So these are my tints.
Yeah.
These are my tints.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. These are just diluted them with water instead of some white is my paper. Yeah, white is my paper. And I just started mixing them together, and I couldn't see if they're mixed there or not. Yeah, that's when we were talking about, but you can see it grays on those areas there. And then I made a painting out of those variations.
It's lovely. And you can see how the colour harmony just comes naturally.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a really lovely picture. I mean, even though you've just done it as a sketch, the colours are very attractive.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
And that's when you don't need to think about it then. You know, you've got one colour, another colour, and white or black if you wanted to. But they're so dark, you don't need black. Yeah, they're so dark by the time you mix them. And then you don't need to think about anything else. You just play with colours. You will get the harmony without thinking about it. Okay? You don't need to think about dirty colours, if it's going to work or not. All you're going to be thinking, okay, I have some lighter tones here. Yeah, I've got a range of medium ones and a bit of darker ones.
Yeah.
And I can go for that range of grays. I can go for that range of greens. I can make it more into this side with a little bit of fresh one. I can go into that side with a little bit of that. I can go equally into that screen, yeah, or into that one. The variations again are endless.
Yeah, and it's lovely because I can pick out the turquoises that you've used as well, which I don't think initially
exactly. Yes, and
they're
those
not,
ones,
you know, you don't see them initially, but they're so subtle and
absolutely,
they
absolutely,
really
yes.
little bit of contrast, yeah.
And they might look more grey here, yeah. But once they're against those pinks, it's fabulous. It's fabulous. And then have a look the same. We have cadmium orange and ultramarine. So we're on a color wheel, ultramarine and cadmium orange. Yeah. And that's a different again approach. I decided to go more into the blues here, but it's again white, a bit more white, mix them together. What's going to happen there? Those are neutrals. And I've used a little bit more diluted paint here as well. Yeah, just by the time it's diluted, or it's could be with white. That's all good there as well. Well, that could be a different variation of it when I had more white. Yeah, but it's just as simple as, but that's more gray. Yeah, so you can have that variety. You can have that range. It depends what you actually want from your painting. Sometimes you don't know what you want from your painting. You just paint. You just paint. You just work and it, and it's just exciting, right? Those are some of the tones. Yeah, just working into my tones. Anything else I've got here? That's another combination of colors. Of where's my color wheel? More kind of some of these crimsons, and so I think more of the purples and greens somewhere there. Yeah, sorry, somewhere there. By the time you get them a little bit more neutralized, starting getting a bit more into those colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
very different. Might not use it for skies, but
Yeah.
I might be using it for something else. It's just knowing if I wanted to use that color palette, and there will be artists who prefer and have a dominant color preferences. Yeah, I love my purples and oranges, so those are my cadmium orange and a range of blues, purples. Yeah. The other people will be painting, it just naturally just happens to them to do that way, the different options. Nothing wrong with any of it.
No,
It's
lovely.
playing, experimenting, enjoying it, and it's simple.
Yeah, yeah. And I can see really how you're building the painting from the foundation upwards, rather than
Yes,
thinking, oh, I'll make a dramatic picture, and then you're trying to pick colours which are dramatic.
exactly.
Whereas you've got them there, and you can say, right, well, that actually would be dramatic if I just did that, that, and that. So you've got that in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And you don't have to have billions of options of tubes, yeah, from the shop.
Yeah.
It's finding which ones you can access and what you can do with them. Some you put aside, because some colors will be, oh, that's already that pure color. Oh, I'm lucky, that's already pure color. I already got that pure color. I don't need to mix them. But some colors will be throwing you because they are not pure, but somewhere here. So ochre will be somewhere here if I mix yellow and violet. Yeah. If I were to have hooker's green, another type of greens into the warmer side, they might have a bit of red in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not quite pure, which is fine. They're just helping us to have something in between those colors. So with the gray somewhere in the middle. Yeah. That's all. And then it's all just practice, starting using them. I've got another picture here, another one of my artists. I'll send you the book name, Stephen Quiller. Yeah, that's again perfect example of mainly working into the orange. Yeah, a bit of yellow, yeah, but it's there, and mainly working into those purples. Yeah, there's a bit of hint of blue. There's a bit of hint of a little bit of hint of green. That's fine, but it's nothing major. Most importantly, that is somewhere there. Yeah. All the rest of variations, and if you had a hint of, there's a tiny bit of red somewhere, there's a bit more green there, there's a bit of, yeah, of course, loads more colors than that, but overall it controls your kind of a message in your essay. Yeah. To simplify it. Yeah. You're cooking chicken, but what is it going to be? Is it going to be more Mexican or more Italian or more plain or more roast or more whatever it is? Yeah, you do those variations.
Yeah, wonderful.
So that's how it is. So it's time for you to practice now.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm going to do some practice. I think I will